My name is James Forde and I'm an Irish documentary photographer. I think photography for me is a way to express myself, and I choose to express myself through images as opposed to, standing on a soapbox, for instance. I like to write a little bit, but, I think the images, they convey emotion and feeling, and that's kind of, that's why, I think with documentary, images can speak to people in many different ways. So I'd prefer for people to take away from it whatever they feel than me telling you what to feel from the images, I arrived in Venezuela in February of 2016. I spent on and off 2 years there. And Venezuela being such a complex story, I immediately started to try and look for a way to document how the communities were dealing with what I believe to be one of the worst humanitarian crises on the planet. But rather than look at it from a kind of more journalistic negative angle, I wanted to try and look at it from more a human side. The piece is a photograph that I was taken at a house party in an area called Petare in Caracas in Venezuela. I spend a lot of time in the area of Petare, which is what you would consider a barrio or a favela, labyrinth-like, that kind of runs up the valleys outside Caracas. The more time I spent there, the more close I became with these youths that kind of live in an area of extreme poverty and high crime, but yet none of them had fallen into a kind of a life of crime, which is extremely common in those areas, and all had been affected by violence and extreme poverty. That kind of experience, it really does humble you massively. And when you can find a positivity and laughter, and I really hope that it touches people in the way that it touched me. And that was literally a moment. I used flash for that photo, and I never ever used flash, but the party was so dark, you couldn't see anything. So that's why you get the lights kind of streaming in the background, because it was a long exposure. It was complete luck that I got that moment. Of course, I was looking for that moment, but it was just luck that I kind of captured it in that split second. From my context, in terms of the work that I've done largely in Venezuela, I mean, Venezuelans have been dealing with restrictions and finding resilience for numerous years at this point. Certainly within hospitals and food restrictions and power outages and shortages. So I suppose, in documentary work, for my personal work, I'd always like to try and find a silver lining rather than focusing on largely on the negative. I don't think there's ever been a time that art wasn't important, but I suppose right now and throughout challenging times, I think it's very important because people need a release or depending on the art form, and obviously art speaks to all of us in many different ways. I think art is important because it soothes the mind or comforts the mind in certain struggling times. And certainly, given our situation now, I think a lot of the greatest and most impactful art pieces are made during times of struggle, whether it be personal struggle or global struggle or community struggle. I don't know what it is about pain and the creative world, but they seem to work well together in some way, that under great pressure people create a lot or use their imagination more so. I think there's numerous examples of great creativity in times of hardship. I think awareness is really important. Like, none of us can change where you're born, but you can, depending on how aware you are of other people's situations, you can change how you live. And that doesn't have to be a huge, it doesn't have to be a huge impact. It can be something very small, to be aware of your neighbor, and then as far as the global situation. So I think it's, to be as aware as possible of your situation and other people's situation, and to just try and manage that as best you can. I think that's all we can do, and I think that's, and to be humble. I think that's the only thing I wish for.